to another episode of Association Peeps in Cubicles Drinking Coffee. Except for today, we are not in cubicles. We are here at the beautiful Hyatt Regency Jacksonville for the Florida Society of Association Executives annual conference. I'm Rachel Luong with Partners in Association Management, and I am honored to be joined by the great Lowell Aplebaum. Lowell, if you would introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Lowell Aplebaum with Vista Cova, and happy to be down here in Florida with y'all.
That's awesome. Lowell is speaking on several sessions today, and we wanted to rack his brain, if you will, on education and how it impacts associations. But first, our coffee of the day today is the Sumatra, sounds like a dirty word to me, the Sumatra Dark Roast coffee. It's earthy and herbal, those are the tasting notes, and it's full-bodied with a smooth mouthfeel and lingering herbal flavors.
Any coffee that gets laughter out of the host is a good coffee.
That sounds good. All right, well, let's jump right into it, shall we? Excellent. All right, so let's talk education, like on the macro level for associations. So, I mean, you travel a lot, you work with a tremendous amount of associations. You speak quite often on various topics. What are you seeing as some of these top trends in education that association professionals need to be aware of?
You know, associations forever have been the home and the hub of individuals and companies for the professions they represent. And learning, education's been core to that. Of course, there's a lot more competitors in the space, other nonprofits and for-profits. And so what once may have been okay, and this was the only place you can come to get your education, associations are really having to look outside of themselves to see what are the platforms, what are the ways to actually make meaning out of learning. It's not enough to have good content. If the experience around that content isn't engaging, it doesn't let you walk away with like tangible outcomes. It's not content you're going to come back for. And so that changes the model itself.
Interesting. And so how will associations know what to provide for those people that they would like to get to attend?
So I'd say a few things. Number one is associations that are in dialogue with their learners about what actually is going to help them feel that they have walked away with something tangible is incredibly important. For some, it's going to be a certificate. For some, it's going to be all the way like a stack of certificates leading to larger learning. For some, it's going to be able to take what they've learned and then translate it to someone else and become actually the teacher. Right? Each of these are different potential models in how you present the same content.
Right.
Especially if you look at the global lens. If you look outside of our country, there's a huge need for associations in learning. But it can't be one-off webinars that have nothing to them. And CME, like continuing education credits, are everywhere nowadays.
Absolutely.
So if there isn't a distinct outcome that can be measured, that is impactful to the individual learner, they're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Right, so, I mean, you talk about learning as an experience.
Sure.
And that sometimes as associations that we fail to create that learning experience. So is that where this association charrette came from? I mean, did it come from you trying to create this experience? Okay, and so how does that work? Like, I have never been to a charrette. I want to go. It's on my bucket list. Talk to me about that experience and how we can take that process back to our associations.
So I think for any organization today, there's a big difference between creating things for your members and creating things with your members. And so I was at a conference where they said, okay, this learning experience is going to be about co-creation. And then they brought a sage from the stage to talk, and there was facilitated discussion, which is great. That's not a poor learning experience, but that's not co-creation.
Right.
Co-creation means you inherently trust that the learners come to the table with the knowledge, the insight, and the depth of understanding and commitment to be able to bring the right topics and to have the right discussions. And so if we actually embraced a model of co-creation in its rawest, most basic form, would it be successful? And out of that came this concept of charrette. I mean, charrette's a French word that the architects use. When there's a big problem, everyone's ideas were put in, they stopped what they're doing, and all the ideas were looked at to how to solve the problem. And so there's this concept, right, that bring together thought leaders from the industry, small group, There's no preset agenda. There's no speakers. They contribute what they think are the biggest problems or biggest opportunities facing the industry. They, as a whole, with like master level facilitation, which is what I can offer, all right, what do we need to prioritize? Like, what is the ones we actually need to dive into? And then to spend real time just focusing first on questions. How do we understand what we need to address better? And then like the solutions will come from that. Like the understanding of like the vision of these key industry insights, the idea of bringing not just like boards together, right? But like thought leaders together. There's something powerful in that. And so it originally came from this place of experimentation around co-creation. What I've actually found is it is a great depth in visioning. I do strategic planning all the time with organizations. I mean, I'd love to do it. And you always, you start with hopefully like the future positive focus of where the organization is going to go. But for many organizations, like, all right, 45 minutes to create our vision of where we're going to be in 3 or 5 years, and then we'll base everything else off of that 45 minutes, which I understand when you're budgeting a retreat, like that's what you got. But like charrette as concept means if you in your off years actually gathered, not just your board, but like the thought leaders in your industry, people committed, smart, diverse, inclusive, and didn't tell them what to talk about, but asked them, where should this organization be focused for success in terms of member need, industry need, in terms of like impact for the future, in terms of that which we know and that which we don't yet know but think may be coming.
Yeah.
And create like a sacred space that's not a hotel ballroom and not a hotel meeting room. I mean, I did one at a dude ranch, right? I did one at a campsite. That creates a different, unique community.
Yeah.
And trust. It's one of the hardest facilitations to do because you have to trust the people there.
Absolutely.
They're going to be the right thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing what committed, intelligent, passionate community of peers come back with that can really shape like the path of the organization.
Yeah. I think what's really interesting to me is as associations we try to provide the answers. And really what we should be doing is providing the questions and the forum for discussion, to allow people to explore. Because I do think sometimes with education, we're trying to say, here are the solutions.
Yeah.
But we're not necessarily identifying the root cause of the challenges and the problems. And I think that's that gap that may exist with education is, if you've got, like you said, the sage from the stage coming up and saying, here's how you do X, Y, and Z, we may be missing the mark on the challenges that people themselves are experiencing and the questions that are unique to their organizations and their associations that we should be asking. Yeah. I think my only rule for a charrette is it has to have air conditioning. It doesn't have to be in a hotel ballroom, but there has to be air conditioning.
So I mean, let's talk about that for a moment. Like the concept of like education and learning is also building trust and camaraderie, right? Although individuals learning is a personal journey, like associations exist to help people associate. And so the provision of content that's for the individual journey, but providing it in a way that like you're not walking that learning journey alone, right? How, if the heart and soul of an organization is the community it's able to create, then how do we create learning experiences that aren't just about the individual journey of learning and acquisition of information, but about the formation of like learning communities that like walk with you along the way, that become your neural networks.
Yeah, I mean the brain trust, right?
Like, I mean that's it. Like pitching heaven, I mean that's part of the potential for an organization to have a much more influential hand in setting up.
Sure, and I mean like associations, I'm sure are not only, mine, being chair of the Florida Society of Association Executives, we're talking about that because we have this young professionals group that is just seeks knowledge and experience, and how do we connect them with the more seasoned professionals, and so that is a way for learning to be informal. Like we focus so much on formal learning.
Yes.
And not necessarily just connecting people to allow them to learn from one another. And so I think that's what associations need to take away, is that you have to look at all types of learning. You have to provide all platforms and opportunities, right? The opportunity is what we have to focus on. This is what I'm thinking more. Not necessarily, again, the solution and the answer, but putting people together in a room and letting them talk about the things that are important to them.
I like your idea of like creating the space for like collaboration when it comes to learning. look, I think we need thought leaders. I think we need instructors. I love teaching. I mean, I'd be sad to not have the opportunity to do so. I think an area that connects what you're saying to that is we could do a much better job of creating models to help the thought leaders that any industry has that are coming to the table to share their knowledge, their perspective, their experience, the right questions, with learning formats that are not walking to a room with 120 chairs, seated theater style, with people just faced one way, seated like sardines that can't move, and then what kind of learning experience are we setting our instructors up for that way? Like that's not dynamic.
Yeah, the only thing there is that forces us to think differently and to act differently as associations. And I think to me that's the biggest takeaway from an education standpoint is that as associations we need to experiment, right? We don't need to change everything immediately because some things will work and some things won't, but we need to be willing to try and to test, and that is foreign I think to associations because we are so busy developing an entire program and this is what it's going to look like and these are the parameters and this is how it's neatly going to fit in that box that we're like, let's try something new and let's be honest about it. Like, we're trying something new. Tell us if you like it. Tell us if you don't. And that's, I look forward to doing those things with associations and thinking outside the box.
I think we live in a time of exponential iteration. Like, that means within there, you have to continually be advancing. But within there, there's the small advances, the tweaks, and the exponential, the large ones. Right?
Yeah.
And static is atrophy at this point. And so if you're learning today, it looks like you're learning 10 years ago, and nothing has changed, and you don't have any plans to experiment how that changes, I'm not sure you're going to be around 10 years from now to provide that kind of learning.
Well, so associations clearly want to grow, they want to adapt. So what one sage piece of advice, I know you can't boil down everything into one thing, that associations, if you were like, do this tomorrow, what would that be regarding association education?
If I was going to pick one thing for them to focus on, the one thing to focus on would be the learner experience. Because I think associations excel at the rigor of content. I think associations have, for decades, if not centuries, created the space to bring together knowledge holders and knowledge seekers. So I think there are models there that are foundational. I think we're so focused on the rigor of that content that we are not great at experience design and what is meaningful in the end in terms of the rigor of that content. If there is a place to start, and that is not just the survey that you send out after the session of a score from 1 to 5, right? That's like meaningful dialogue with your learners about what they're looking to accomplish and how do we set up learning in such a faculty that you will get these things and you'll be able to share these things. And I think those conversations, the organization to be a place of continual learning about the learner experience, I think that's where I'd start.
That's awesome. Well, I look forward to continuing the conversation because it can't be a one-off conversation to create meaningful experiences and meaningful change. But I thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for the coffee.
You're so welcome.
It was a wonderful mouthfeel, I have to say.
That's awesome. Well, that about wraps up our episode of Association Peeps in Cubicles, drinking coffee. And, I appreciate you, Lowell, for being here and for all you do for the association community. And look forward to creating experiences together.
Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great day, guys.